Okay, so fair warning, this video is going to be in English, and that's because, one, I think that people have strong opinions about this topic, and so no matter what I say, it will probably not change their opinions. I think I might be wrong, we'll see. And so if I didn't have a lot of time to prepare, and I always wanted to make this video in English and make it properly so that I can always kind of share the video to someone and also see what other people who are, in English speaking countries, because Magic the Gathering is basically, all in English. The content is in English. So that's why I'm gonna do this one in English. I hope that's okay. So the topic at hand is basically whether we should have proxy cards when playing Magic the Gathering. There's a vote on our WhatsApp group. If you haven't noticed that or voted yet, then please do vote. If you don't care about this, you don't care one way or the other, then feel free to skip it. That's your choice, but would be great if you could vote. Today, I will be closing the vote at 20:00 basically, and then we'll just see. No, it's gonna be what's it gonna be. And as you can tell from my vote, I voted against proxies. I actually agree with a lot of the reasons why people use proxies. I don't disagree with all of them actually, but in the end of the day, I am against them, and I will explain why. And I will probably be biased. I will try to, explain why people are for it, for proxying cards, but my bias will show. So just so that you know, that's going to be the case. And basically, I noted down some of the most common reasons why people proxy cards, and I very quickly, I wanted to prepare more for this, but it is what it is. And I quickly noted down some stuff that I think are counter arguments and so forth. So first of all, what is proxying, right? So in Warhammer 40k, Andris already mentioned that in our WhatsApp group that there's another game called Warhammer 40k where people are using miniatures, and because the cost of the product is so high, what people do is they buy 3D printers, or they pay someone else who has a 3D printer to print the models themselves without paying, for the officially released product, because that's cheaper. And in Warhammer, that makes a lot more sense because the product is a lot more expensive than in Magic the Gathering, because you have to buy the box. It's a big box. There's a shipping cost that is a lot more than shipping cards, and if you want to play officially, you have to buy the official product and you have to paint them, because that's a rule. You can only play in tournaments with painted miniatures, and they have to be painted in a specific way, following specific rules. And so there's no doubt that Warhammer is a lot more expensive, a lot more involved, and because of that, it makes sense that people wanna reduce the cost. And in Magic the Gathering, we have a similar idea, which is instead of using the official cards printed by Magic the Gathering that are in a limited amount, because there's always a limit how many cards are printed, instead of using these original cards, we basically make our own. We print them either at home using our own printer, and we just cut them out and sleeve them, and we can, even proxying can be like for super cheap and more expensive, because there are basically companies like printingproxies.com that basically do this for you. It's a lot more kind of chic, and it looks better, looks more professional, and you can have the cards foiled, and you don't have to do it yourself, and they just print them for you and ship them. But you can also make them at home basically. So that's the idea. And then the question is, can we use these proxy printed custom cards or not, right? So that's basically the thing that we are voting on, again in WhatsApp, so please vote. And I'm going to basically present the reasons why people want a proxy, and then kind of my counter arguments, because, well, as I said, I am against it, and I will be fair when talking about the arguments for. I will show examples, and that I will agree with some of them even, and then later you can make your own mind, like if you agree with me or not, and you can vote however you want. I just wanted to put kind of my opinion out there as well, because other people in WhatsApp were also like sharing what they think about the game, and I thought I should, give my opinions as well. So the first argument is that it basically saves money because real cards cost too much. Proxies let everyone pay without spending thousands of dollars, right? So as an example, I just randomly Googled, okay, again, I didn't have as much time to prepare as I wanted, but basically I just Googled like, hey, like what is the winning Commander tournament deck in the biggest tournament in 2025, right? And I'm not saying this is like how accurate this is, but that's not the point. Actually, I just wanted an example, and this is basically the winning deck by Gabo Contreras, right? And this is what the deck looks like, and this is what it costs, right? So this guy played Commander in a tournament with many people. When everyone brings their best decks, the strongest decks they can get, right? And this one, the winning one, costed about 7,600 euros, right? And so this is what the deck costs. And then there's also, if you look at individual costs of cards, there are cards that can, this is just again one example that is used in Commander. Some tournament decks have them. It costs, this version costs $7,000 euros. This one costs 20,000 euros, right? So I agree with this argument, right? That these cards can cost a lot. Some of them do cost a lot, and decks cost a lot, right? So I don't actually argue with that. My issue is that the way how I see it is that arguing about it this way is like saying, well, I want to get from location A to location B, and I have to do it in a Ferrari, right? So I have to buy a Ferrari to get from point A to point B, right? I can't buy this car, I can't use public transportation, I can't use a bike, I can't walk. I can only participate in this if I buy a Ferrari, and there's no other way, and therefore I need a 3D printer to print a Ferrari so I can drive it, right? Now, I can't argue that, this car probably looks better than this one and so forth, right? But it's like, it just isn't true that the only way you can participate, compete, and get cards is by buying the most expensive ones, and that you need a 7,000 euro deck, right? That's I need this. If you say you need this, I'm not gonna argue with you, but I'm gonna say that's your problem. That's a you problem, right? Because I don't need the 7,000 euro deck to play with my friends and compete and win. And in fact, I would even say, let's say that we agreed that okay, proxying is fine, because by proxying I can buy this 7,000, 8,000 euro deck for let's say 100 euros, right? Okay, but like why are you looking at this deck? Why are you using these super expensive, many times not legal, banned cards that probably should be banned even in Commander, that cost a lot of money? These decks as an example, and saying, well, I need to proxy because this, right? Well, you can buy a deck that costs much cheaper. You can compete in tournaments with it. You don't need this, right? Like for example, so I was playing around in Architect because I really wanted to buy cards from Kamigawa set, because we were voting on Kamigawa, but it didn't win the vote, so we didn't draft it. And there are just, some cards that I really like in that set because I just like them. Doesn't matter why. Aesthetics, the story, and so forth. And I wanted to buy them. And so I was looking at, okay, what deck can I buy? And by researching, I realized that there is a Commander tournament deck that you can buy on a budget, and you can win with it, and it costs 50 about this is an estimated cost. If I tried to buy all these cards, as on their own from sellers, it would cost me about 52 euros. Probably with shipping and so forth, it probably would actually cost me like 70, because the chances that I will get these cards for these specific prices, it depends on the seller, and the prices change. So with shipping and everything else, it's probably going to be 70 euros. So like this deck participates in tournament games, and some people can win with these decks. right? So you don't need a 7,600 euro deck. You can buy a 50, 70 euro deck and you can still participate. And there are, so let me just find them. There is statistics, you know, about all the tournaments. So basically I can go to this website, EDH Top 16, go to Commanders. Oh, I'm already there. Okay, so I can find Yuriko. So there are 91 decks that use this commander in the tournament, and I can see how did they perform. And this year, in tournaments where there were more than 50 people, let's look at how many times did this deck, well, these decks aren't completely the same, some of them are more expensive, some less expensive, but how many made the top 16, right? So this one made first place, fourth, fifth, seventh, right? So we see the player count. So out of 64 players, seventh place, out of 56, first place, right? So this deck can score high and can win. And sure, there are decks that probably win more and more often and so forth, but you can have a competitive deck and play and win without spending 7,000 euros. You can spend less, much less, right? So that's, I think, the difference between Warhammer, because in Warhammer this is harder to do, but in Magic the Gathering, because there's a lot more freedom, you can use a lot more cards in your commander deck, almost any cards, and there's usually cheaper replacements for stronger, more expensive cards, and there are cards that cost a lot just because they look nice, right? So you can have a competitive deck for very small amounts of money, basically. So it's not, and the same goes for singles, right? So for example, again, this is just an example. There's a card named Damnation. This is the most expensive card that I have in my collection. I have this one. I got this a long time ago. It was the first booster I bought on random. My friend basically kind of persuaded me to get into Magic to try it out. I also bought one booster, and this is what I got. It costs this $130 right now. It used to cost actually a bit more, but now it costs this much. Right? This is the most expensive card I have in my collection. Do I have this in any of my decks? No, because one, I just like it, and I like the fact that I just own it. I don't necessarily need to play with it. But it's also the fact that it costs 4 mana, and there are cards that do the same and are cheaper and better. Like for example, because this card destroys all creatures, okay, I can do the same thing for less mana and for a cheaper cost. For example, there's a card named Blasphemous Act. This card comes in almost every precon that uses red in its colors, and I can't, maybe don't quote me on that, but most precons nowadays will have this card if the deck has the red color in it. So yes, it costs technically more, but it has this effect that it costs 1 less for each creature on the battlefield. So in practice, this card usually only costs you 1 or 2 mana. So it costs you half or even 3 mana less than this card, almost by default, because the moment you want to cast a board wipe and destroy all creatures is when there's a lot of creatures on the field, and reducing this cost will be very simple. Okay, it technically doesn't destroy them, it deals damage, and it is possible that maybe something could survive 13 damage, but at that point you have other problems, and you shouldn't have allowed it to happen, that there's a creature with so much health, right, so toughness, that it can survive this, right? So again, that's a you problem, not a proxying or whatever problem. You can always find cards that are cheaper variants of whatever effect you want to do that is just better, right? Like I would, even if I had like one of the cheaper versions, like, okay, this is still expensive, but it's less than $100, right? I still wouldn't put this in my deck because I can get this, and there are other cards and other colors that are even cheaper than this. This is just an example of something that always comes in precon decks. You can very easily get this, and as I said, there are even cheaper cards, right? So this argument that like do cards cost a lot? Can they be expensive? Are decks that are expensive? I agree with that. I'm not gonna say that I like that. myself. I don't. But unlike Warhammer and some other hobbies, like there are alternatives how you can make this cheaper. And even if you right, so I explained this counter argument. This is just a minor one, is that, you know, if you buy proxy cards, you won't be able to sell them back for a lot of money. Let's say one day you decide that you don't want to play Magic the Gathering anymore, or you have cards you don't want because your collection is too big, you want to sell them. Okay, well, who's gonna buy your proxies? Especially if they're used and they're not even good looking. Like, someone might, but people want to buy real cards. And real cards retain their value. Sure, it fluctuates. Some cards that used to cost a lot might not cost that much anymore, but it can also go the other way around, where you bought a super cheap card and now it costs a lot because of some kind of combination that people have figured out. So real cards also retain their value, proxies do not. And then, even if, let's say, you agree with me and you say, okay, I understand, I don't need a 7,000 euro deck, but I need a 52 euro, 70 euro deck. Okay, well, that's still too much, right? So no judgment. People, like anyone, can be in a point in life and they just can't afford things, right? So that it happens, right? And there's no judgment on that, and it's not, I don't think anyone should feel bad about that, that's the case. But again, if you say, okay, I'm gonna proxy, let's take an example. Let's take this deck, right? So I made this deck. I don't have it. I would like to buy it. I probably shouldn't because it's a tournament deck. It's not. Well, that's a different conversation. But basically, let's try and proxy this. Okay, so there's this website. There are others, and I can, of course, proxy the deck by myself by just printing the cards at home. Okay, well, you're gonna have to buy some kind of paper. So let's say a A4 white paper, right? So that's gonna be 450. Then you need some kind of printer. So let's assume you already have one, but you need paint, the ink, right? So okay, let's say you use cheaper cartridges, not the official ones, but you still need to buy them or refill them. Let's say that costs 10 total, right? And then you have to cut them. You will need sleeves, right? So let's go to game room. Like, you can always find sleeves that cost less. You don't have to buy these, but let's say, okay, so the sleeves are gonna cost 650 or 5. There are sleeves that cost less, that you can probably buy sleeves for also like 2 euros or 1 euro even. Of course, there's a shipping cost, but basically the moment you start kind of putting it all together, and also the time you spend, sure, if you have maybe a printer at work and your workplace allows you to print however much you want, you don't have to pay for it. I can see how that would be like super affordable. I can see that. But unless you actually calculate that, and that's the case, it probably isn't the case. You're probably overspending, actually. You can buy decks that are even cheaper than 52, like 30 euros, because there are pre-constructed decks that, like, for example, this is a deck that also costs 50, almost 60 euros. This is the one that I based my Commander deck on. It has this, well, this precon says that you have to use this one as a commander, but that's your choice. I use this one, and this deck, you can buy it for, I don't remember, where's the, where did I put it? Well, let's just quickly find it. So, World Shaper. Commander deck, right? So you can buy this for 42 euros basically. It's already pre-made. You don't have to find the single cards. You don't have to order them. There's one shipping. You can buy them. And you can also have like even better deals. Like, there is this deal where you can buy 2 decks. So 200 cards for 62 euros. Right? And so let's just, these are just examples. And let's now look at, as I said, I wanna buy this deck by proxying it. So I'm gonna export all the cards that I have in the deck. I'm gonna copy them and I'm gonna put them into this service, right? So that basically so this is the service that allows you to proxy cards. Again, there are others, but this is like a super popular one. So let's order my cards. So let's clear this list. So what I can do, I can select MTG and I can import all the cards that I already know that I want and how many I want. I just put this in, add cards. It will automatically basically add all the cards to my shopping cart. I can of course make changes to them, like change how it looks, whether it's a foil one or not, and all of that changes the price. But okay, if I wanted to proxy this deck, how much does it cost me? $100. Great. Okay, so I can buy this for 50, 70, but if I proxy them, that are fake cards that will not retain their value, it costs me $100. So proxying can be cheaper, but you can also actually waste a lot of money and you end up with fake cards that you can't sell later on. And of course, there are ways how to do this even more cheaply. But then again, you have to calculate it. Okay, so I have to buy the paper, buy the cardboard, maybe sleeves, the ink, I need a printer. For someone, it's gonna be like super cheap. For someone, they're actually gonna be overspending. So unlike in Warhammer, where it's like obviously cheaper to just 3D print miniatures, and here it's not so obvious. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. So there's always alternatives. And what I don't like about this argument is not that I agree that there are cards that are expensive and decks that are expensive. I just don't like that people pretend that, oh, there's nothing else I can do. I can only drive a Ferrari from point A to point B. There's no other alternative. Everything else is more expensive. It just isn't true. So I'm gonna take a drink. I'm probably gonna cut this out if I have time. Okay, so that's the first main argument, that it saves money. Maybe it saves money. Probably not. It depends. Then the second one is accessibility. Basically, that there are rare and old cards that you can't buy anymore, at least easily, because there's a limited amount of printing that cards have, and they don't print. Magic the Gathering Wizards of the Coast doesn't print anymore. And because of that, it can be very hard to get cards, because you have to buy them from sellers, you have to negotiate with them, you have to find them, there's a shipping cost. These cards are expensive, right? So this one is a bit harder to argue against, because yes, cards are harder to get. The first argument would be, first of all, that it kind of forces you to be actually creative, because if all you do is just go on a deck list that you found online, you export the cards, export the deck list, and you put it inside this proxy thing. There's no thinking, there's no creativity, there's like no effort. Do you even understand how the deck works? Maybe you do, but the fact that you have to actually find these cards and trade for them and so forth, it kind of forces you to actually make your deck your own, and that you will never have the same deck. Because if we are proxying, well, then why shouldn't we all just proxy this tournament winning deck? Okay, maybe I don't like it and so forth, maybe there are cards I don't like how they look, like it's probably not going to be the same, but it's just, now we can all have the same cards, and some cards are stronger than other cards, and they probably should be banned, but they aren't. And so, like, why wouldn't we all just buy the strongest cards? And all our decks will start to look the same, because when people play in tournaments, like, there are certain cards that are just always there, like Mox Amber, Lotus Petal, Mox Diamond, right? Like everyone, Birds of Paradise, everyone uses the same cards. And so that, yes, we have accessibility, but now everyone's just copying each other, not thinking, not being creative. Your collection is the same as mine, and that's boring. But that's not really a argument against, because yes, accessibility is a problem. I agree, but is that really bad? Because I think that the fact that you have your own collection, and it's also the fact that, you know, people, because Magic the Gathering was built to be this way. It was built to be collectible, tradable, and that you couldn't just get in it. That was the whole point. Saying that, yeah, I'm gonna play Magic, but I don't like that, and I don't think that's bad. It's kind of like it's a weird, banal example, but it's like, oh, I have a girlfriend or a wife or a child, and it's like, oh, it turns out that I have to pay attention to them. Yeah, I want to have the kid, but not have to do anything with them, right? It's like, well, very convenient for you, but that's not how it works, right? Like, it's like you're just gonna have a lot of problems and probably a divorce, right? So, and the same kind of is gonna happen here, because it's like, if we can proxy, that we then drafting kind of becomes, I wouldn't say useless, but it's like, well, why should I draft? Maybe if I like it, or I want to spend time with a bigger group of people, but it's like, well, I don't have to draft to collect cards. I can just proxy, so why draft? I also don't have to trade, so I participate less in communities. I don't communicate with people, basically, because you could probably get the cards you want by just trading. You don't have to buy them, you can trade them. Like, I basically had, just recently, I had like a bunch of Lord of the Rings cards that I know I'm not going to use them. I would rather give them to someone else. So me and another player, Edgar's, we basically traded. I traded, like, I don't know, like 7 of some of the cards I have for one of his. And it's like, I was happy for that, because like, I got rid of cards I would never use, and he got cards that he actually might use, right? So it's a win-win, and no money was spent. We can also, like, if accessibility is a problem because shipping costs, because yeah, shipping can be a pain in the ass, but if we do a joint payment, again, you can go on our WhatsApp group, you can say, hey, I want to buy this product, these cards, but the shipping is a bit, you know, pricey, so maybe we can do a joint purchase. Like, maybe you want to buy something as well, so we can put all of our things in the cart and make a purchase together, and then let's say the shipping is like 16 euros. Well, if you divide that by 8 people, you're only paying 2 euros, right? So you can actually, there are other ways how to get access to cards if there are some kind of accessibility issues, right? And then there's also the fact that, you know, Magic, as I said, Magic was built to be like this. And so, like, why if you really hate the fact that you have to trade and cards aren't available and you don't have everything, then like a board game would be better. Like, there are board games, you buy a board game, everything is there. And there are card games, like recently we were to one, you know, to Meeple Cave, a board game club, and people were playing Arkham Horror, the card game, right? So in that game, it's also a card game, but when a new expansion comes out, you can buy all the cards in that expansion with one purchase. You don't have to find cards, and some cards aren't available. Yes, sometimes things go out of stock, but you can just, my recommendation honestly would be to just, you're just playing the wrong game. Then you should play a game that actually you can buy everything with one purchase, and you don't have to trade and find cards. So accessibility is an issue, but there are solutions and ways how to overcome that. And then there's the question of, like, you know, maybe play a board game, because then you pay once and you can play it however times you want, and so forth. The next argument is about testing, right? So people say that, well, I don't know if the deck that I made, whether it's good or not. I need to test it, but if I have to spend, again, 7,000 euros to buy a deck to test it, that's super expensive. So I could make a proxy, try it out, and then buy the cards, right? So this one also makes sense. My issue with that is, again, because there are alternatives that I would actually suggest. Like, I also, like, I have this Archdeck account, right? So this is where you can make this free account, and you can basically make as many digital decks you want, and you can test them out here, right? Like, if your argument was, this helps me with testing and I want to save money, then this is the cheapest way to do that. The account is free. You just make your account, and then you can make as many decks you want here, and you can, like, for example, again, this one as an example. So I I can see all the cards. I can easily, basically, I can put some cards in a maybe board. Like, okay, these are cards I maybe would want to add and buy, but I'm not sure. So I can keep track of all the cards I have found and researched and discovered that maybe these could be good, but I don't know. So they are in here. There's a lot of them. Then there's the actual deck, and it's nicely categorized. I know, okay, these are my instants, these are my land cards. There's statistics about, okay, how many cards I have in here, and it very nicely what it does. Let's what was the name of that? Always forget the name of the card. Yeah, Badger Mall Cub, right? So I can add cards. It automatically categorizes it. I can change the categorization later. And what it does, it immediately like warns me if I did something wrong, right? So it's in red, so something is wrong. Okay, what is wrong? So there's an error. I can click here and it will tell me, okay, so first of all, your deck has more than 100 cards, right? So that's a mistake. And second is that I have a card that is outside my color identity, right? So it warns me if I have cards. So this one is green, but my commander is blue and black, right? So it does a lot of this kind of making sure I don't have the wrong cards, banned cards. If I have some kind of limit that is over how many cards I can have in my deck, there are statistics automatically that I don't have to calculate, like, okay, what on average, what does every card cost? How much mana do I need? How much am I producing? And everything gets updated automatically. There's a lot more statistics. Like I can also just go in more and click EDH rec, and it gives me recommendations on cards that other people put in similar decks. So it helps me with researching as well. And I can also just playtest the deck by clicking here. And it's like, okay, so these are my starting cards. If I would shuffle the deck and I draw 7 cards, now it asks me if do I like these cards and I keep them, or am I going to reshuffle them, right? So let's say I keep them, then I can play them out, I can tap them, and I can play a card and so forth, right? I can play test this here for free, however much I want. Everything is tracked digitally. I don't have to because if you're proxying them, you have to sleeve them. Then you decide, I'm not going to put this card in. Now you have to re-sleeve the other card and swap it out and in. And sure, testing it in live with real people on the table, there's a benefit to that, right? Because you technically can't do that here. But like this is frankly enough. And this is for free. No shipping, no proxying, no nothing. You can test it out here. There are also places where you could play the game online for free and test it out with other players. You would have to find people who are willing to do that with you, but we could all test the game digitally for free without proxying anything. So again, I agree that accessibility is a problem, but there are alternatives, and this is completely for free. So I just kind of don't agree that this is that big of an issue. Well, the testing part. Okay, then the next one is casual fun. So kitchen table and friendly groups care more about playing together than rules. So some people want to win, right? So the goal of the game is to win. And if you are not doing anything during the game, you're just sitting there not playing cards, so forth and so forth, you get kicked out of the game quickly because you lost in a couple of turns. There's nothing fun about that. So to say that, oh, I don't care about the strength of my deck and so forth, and I don't care what I'm playing with, that's not true in the end of the day, because people do. You will hear, like we have all heard people saying that, oh, that's cheating, or oh, that's too powerful, or oh, how did you do that, and so forth. Like people do care. They actually do care. That's not really true. But even if you personally are like, well, I don't care about winning, I don't care about what happens during the game, you can say that, but someone is gonna actually like build this deck, Because what's preventing him from doing that? He's gonna build this deck and come with that on the on the game night when we're playing Commander, and he's gonna play this, right? And it's like, what are you gonna do, right? Well, we agreed on proxying. You can proxy whatever you want, how much you want. We agree on that. So there's what now? I guess we can make another vote and put limitations on it. Okay, fine. But the moment you kind of say we can proxy, okay, who's gonna prevent power creep? Who's gonna prevent someone taking overpowered cards to the game or proxying a deck like this? Okay, like, are you gonna make sure that doesn't happen? Are you gonna like check everyone's deck before playing? Like, probably not. And you can argue that, well, yeah, but anyone can also buy a card, a real card that is overpowered. Well, those usually cost more, so it's less likely that that will happen. And if it's just one card, it probably won't change the game drastically because you have 100 cards. Are you going to even draw the card? If you don't draw it, then that's less of a problem. And yeah, so we also have basically draft, right? So we play draft, and draft kind of is already like balanced to some degree because there's one set. The set has been more or less designed, some more, some less, to be balanced so that nobody can just create a super OP deck. Like, it can happen, if people allow someone to get all the best cards and they just take the cards they like, how they look, and they don't think about their deck at all when they're picking the cards, when they're drafting. Like, of course, nobody can do anything about that. That's your choice. And you can always get technically unlucky to some degree, but like usually decks are quite balanced, or at least they end up like that. And so draft already makes the game kind of fair and balanced. So casual play, sure, if you and even if we like said, okay, we only all play casually, like you're not allowed to bring a deck like this. Okay, so you're building a deck like this, let's say. Okay, well, we already established that if you try to proxy this 5270 € deck, it costs you 100. Right? We already established that proxying this is more expensive. Okay, maybe if you do it yourself on your own printer, maybe not, but still, it's like, and you can get decks that are cheaper like this, and this is still like a strong deck, and you probably shouldn't bring this as well, even though it costs 5270. Okay, and then there's the fair play argument. Winning depends on skill and strategy, not on who has a bigger budget, because money is semi play to win. So I kind of have to repeat what I already said, because proxying doesn't prevent this issue, because now I can print all the powerful cards that I can. Now there's no limit. At least before there was money as a limit, and people are just usually have some kind of limit how much they're gonna spend, and if they buy, again, I'm just repeating the same argument, and again we have draft and so forth. But the other argument, the new one for this is, how do I put this, because I don't want to sound like an asshole. So every time I draft in the tournament, I win that tournament. So if your argument is that proxying is going to help you with that, like it probably won't, because I will be able to proxy too. And at least when we're drafting, you can mess with me, you can take out cards that I might like or want, and you can hate draft, that's how that's called, and I can get unlucky when drafting, and there's a fair chance there is actual fair play. But if I can proxy, if people who spend a lot more time researching, thinking about this, if they get access to all the cards, then like because if you just randomly proxy this deck and you just recently started playing, I don't know if you're gonna have a better time than playing a whatever drafted deck you made by drafting. Like, I don't think like, how is that gonna be easier or fairer for you? I just don't see that, because it's a double-edged sword. Okay, you can proxy, you can technically get better cards, so maybe you will have a better chance at winning, but I can do that as well. And the other people who also win our draft tournaments and win when we're playing Commander, they will also be able to proxy cards. And then what? And there are some people, again, because if I buy this deck, it's still strong, even though I bought them with real cards. And if I know how to play the deck, like someone who knows how to play the game better will still have a better chance of winning than someone who bought a super expensive deck. There are limitations to that, but basically, I'm not convinced that. Like, yes, Magic the Gathering is somewhat play to win because there is a difference between deck strength based on how much they cost and how powerful the cards are, but being able to play, I think, is more important than proxying cards. I don't think it's gonna save you, and I'm just not convinced. But I might be wrong about that. But my main issue is that everyone else will be able to proxy as well, and then what? And then there's the argument that basically Wizards of the Coast does not deserve our money. They are not good shepherds of the hobby, right? So there are people who really hate the fact that that we basically have all these we have all these universes beyond sets. Basically, Magic the Gathering used to have its own kind of universe, its own setting, its own characters. It still has it. It still has it, of course. But there are people who just don't like the fact that like other stuff is being added to the game, like other IPs, and that those IPs usually cost a lot more than the than the original cards, and there's so many sets coming out, and there's a tendency for some cards to cost more than they used to, let's say, because of Magic the Gathering increasing prices. So there are things that Magic the Gathering doesn't do well, and there are things that they shouldn't do that I agree with, and I don't like myself that they are doing, and so forth. So I agree with that. But again, unlike Warhammer, where the prices are just huge, and based on the rules, they just constantly just say, well, you can't play with these miniatures, you can't play with these armies. In Commander, there's not that many cards you're not allowed to play with, right? So there's only like 163 cards that are banned. This number is increasing because, again, Magic the Gathering has made some mistakes in designing some cards, so more cards are being banned, but not many cards are banned, and usually all of these cards will have cheaper alternatives that do more or less the same thing. Maybe are not that powerful, but still. So in Commander, you can mostly just play whatever you want, right? So there's, even if I look at cards that are only from universes beyond, there's like 7,000 cards, right? If I look at cards in green, black, and red, there's 28,000, right? So there's like I don't even know how many cards there are in total. Let's check. So 27,000 unique cards, right? So unique cards, there are a lot of reprints, alternative versions, that's a different conversation, but unique cards, supposedly 20, I don't know how accurate this is, let's say that it is. So 27 unique cards, okay. So out of 27, 163 are banned. So that's like nothing. That is like nothing. A lot of these cards are out of print. You can't even get them, or these are super expensive cards anyway. So it's not as bad as in Warhammer, but also, even if I agree that there are things that Magic the Gathering shouldn't do, we can decide what we do in our own pod, right? So in our own community, we already have like voting for sets that we will draw. We don't have to draft, yeah. So we don't have to draft everything. We just draft what we want, and we can skip the stuff that we don't like. Like we skipped basically drafting Marvel. We're probably gonna be skipping Star Trek, right? So there are things that we just skip, that we don't participate in. You don't have to buy all the products. You don't have to buy all the cards. You don't have to play all the formats. There are so many formats we can play in. There are formats that are like cheaper. I'm just quickly typing, right? So oh, sorry, Popper. That's what happens when you write quickly, right? So basically, so commander, right? So this is a commander deck, a tournament commander deck. This is a tournament commander deck, right? So this is how much they can cast. So there's a big difference, but in general, there are versions of formats where you're not supposed to use like super rare mythic cards. You're only using common and uncommon cards, right? So rarity uncommon, right? So you only use cards that are uncommon, right? So they have the U in here. They don't have that special symbol here usually, right? So these are cards that are more available, more accessible, cheaper to buy than the ones that have, you know, that are rare. They have the R over here. They have this special like kind of foiled symbol over here, and so forth. And they're less available, less accessible. They're less printed than other cards. And there's a rule: you can only play commander with basically these uncommon common cards, right? So you don't have to buy the rare cards or the mythic cards or the super rare cards. You don't have to do that. We can all agree that we will only play with commons and uncommons. We can all agree that there's some kind of max deck budget, right? So you can only play a deck if its total cost is 52 euros, right? Or 30 euros, right? We can decide on that. We don't have to make it so open-ended you can play with whatever you want. We can just say, no, there's a limit, only 52 euros, and that's it. And then the power level will be more or less equal. Yeah, sure, someone will buy some super expensive card, but it'll only be one in the deck. And if he doesn't draw it, he has a lot of bad cards, and that's his fault, basically. Yeah, so there you can argue there might be some ways to kind of figure out a way, okay, I will sneak in one super expensive card for 20 euros and everything else will be super cheap and I will still win. I'm not convinced that's really gonna happen and that's really that possible, but okay, I guess it is because I can't prove otherwise. And the same is with everything else. We can pick the format, we can limit a budget, we can decide, vote, which we already do, what sets we draft and what we don't draft. We can have our own ban list. Like we have, the power is kind of in our field. We don't have to buy every product, and we can find cheaper alternatives. Like there are even like ways how to just go to card market. This is where people can buy cards, both from people like you and me who just want to get rid of their cards, or stores that have their own profiles in here and they sell cards digitally. You know, not digital cards, but they allow you to buy it here and then they ship them to you because they don't have like an e-store or something like that. And you can basically go to sets, lots, and collections. Yeah, so lots. And then we have like 4,000 random cards, 24 euros, right? So again, 100 cards proxied for 100 euros, or you can get 4,000. Yes, they are random. The good thing is that you can contact these sellers and basically ask them like, hey, show me some pictures, like, do you have an arc? Probably they don't have an arc deck list like this for 4,000 cards, but you never know. There are some people who store all their collections in Architect, like all their cards, and you can actually ask them and they will show you everything they have in there. And there are people who are trying to get rid of their cards. They just don't want to play Magic anymore, or they don't have the time, whatever the reason. They just want to get rid of their cards, and you can technically buy cards from them. Professional sellers, only with outstanding ratings, only cards in English. Check, right? So there's someone, and he has even a picture. Well, it's only one, you can ask for more. So 550 cards for €5. Shipping is kind of expensive with this one, probably because of the box, right? And then you can go also sets, loots, collection, loots 4,000. Right, so 29, shipping is 14. And again, we can go to this seller and we can contact the guy. All right, so contact, and we can just ask him like, hey, I'm interested in this product. Show me pictures, what is in there, what is the state of the cards. We can also maybe agree on a different shipping method. You can communicate and you can get like huge amount of cards for a lot cheaper than proxying cards, right? So again, you can pick and choose and find alternatives, right? So okay, this video is like 51 minutes long already. I wanted it to be like only 30, but it's 51. Okay, so I'm gonna stop yapping. Like, so my position is that we shouldn't proxy, even though there's a lot of stuff I agree with, and I think that there could be times when proxying would be okay. But because there's a lot of downsides with proxying, and because there's a lot of issues now that someone's gonna have to worry about, like, okay, like, do we have a ban list? How do we deal with people who are gonna proxy a €7,000 deck? Like, someone has to do that, and it's probably not gonna be you, right? So why are you? Maybe don't vote for that, because now people are gonna we're gonna have to like check everyone's deck now. Okay, I'm willing to do that, but you're not gonna like that. You're not gonna like that. I can guarantee you that. Nobody's gonna like that. So yeah, that's my position. If anyone has questions, feel free to ask them either in our WhatsApp group or on the YouTube comments. Like, I think that this is something that people have really strong opinions. I'm not convinced that what I said is gonna convince anyone. That's fine. But as long as people, make sure to share their opinion and vote on the pool, that's fine. And whatever is gonna be, that's gonna be how we're gonna go forward from now on. There's gonna be consequences, right? So if we say, okay, so if everyone votes on yes, someone is gonna be like, well, I'm not gonna play with you if you're proxying, right? So you're gonna have to be okay with that, because we're not voting on everyone is forced to proxy and that's the only way you can play the game anymore. No, it's just like, if you want to, you can. Okay, but someone is gonna say, well, I'm only gonna play with people who are gonna proxy, and I'm not gonna trade with you. Even if you say this card is real, I'm just not gonna trust you. And then the other opposite is true, is that if we say no, well, then someone is gonna say, well, I can't afford the card, so I'm just not gonna participate, right? So there's pluses and minuses to each of them. In my opinion, there's more minuses if we say yes. So I voted no, even though I can understand like both of these to some degree, right? But yeah, my position is to not do that. So thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see how the vote goes. So till next time.